What is the nature of a moral society? And what is the nature of a cruel society? A number of things converge this week that lead me to think a lot about these questions. And the first thing actually is that tomorrow, actually today, this Shabbat, is the anniversary of Kristallnacht, November 9th, 1938. Kristallnacht, the night of broken glass, when Jews were attacked in riots across Germany, synagogues burned and destroyed. Most of the synagogues in Germany, you go to a German city and usually the grand synagogues were destroyed on Kristallnacht. Synagogues burned and destroyed, people maimed and murdered, homes, stores, and businesses vandalized and destroyed. By the way, not coincidentally or not insignificantly, this was the first instance of the new media of radio being used to work up a population to a violent frenzy. We forget how social media is not the first time the introduction of a new medium of communication has been used to create political chaos. My grandmother was living in Vienna, Germany at that point. Vienna was part of Germany in 1938. And my grandmother was living in Vienna, Germany in 1938, November 9th, 1938. My grandfather had already been able to get to Turkey to try to get a job so he could bring the rest of the family, but my grandmother was there with my mother, who was one and a half, not even. And she told me, my grandmother told me, the maid came that morning with 3 eggs. So that was unusual. Eggs, there was no refrigeration, so you had to eat eggs immediately. She came with 3 eggs and said, I would not take the little one out tonight if I were you. I said, she knew it was happening. My grandmother said, of course, everyone knew it was happening. It was all over the radio. My grandmother always let me know that not everyone in Germany or Austria at the time were Nazis. And that makes the current situation actually more frightening, to see how such things can take hold of a society, even while many people are loudly objecting. The Nazis came to power because of misplaced pride on the part of a large contingent of German society, people who had no appreciation for democracy, who clamored to be a great power in ways which demonized others, and with the acquiescence of many citizens who placed bread and butter issues over the importance of defending the principles which enable democracy to exist, and with the collaboration of many elected politicians who were focused on their own personal advancement rather than on their larger obligations to defending the society they were supposed to be leading, and over the objections of many who did see the danger but were not able to prevent the tidal wave they saw coming. I don't personally remember Kristallnacht, although in some sense I remember it. Even though I wasn't born at the time, I remember it. But I directly remember 51 years later, on November 9th, 1989. November 9th, 1989, when the world witnessed the fall of the Berlin Wall. Elie Wiesel, writer, Holocaust survivor, and 1986 Nobel Peace Prize winner, at that point voiced the concern that from then on, the memory of Kristallnacht might be buried under memories of the wall coming down. Could both be remembered on one day? Maybe they can. Maybe. Most people I know remember Kristallnacht more than they remember the fall of the Berlin Wall, if you put a date to it. But a little under 10 years ago, the World Affairs Council of Greater Harrisburg hosted in Harrisburg the German Consul General of New York, the diplomat that represents the German government in New York and at the United Nations. he came to Harrisburg and spoke. And he started, near the beginning of his speech, he gave his own personal story. His own personal story included being born and raised in communist East Germany and being elected to East Germany's first and maybe only democratically elected parliament after the fall of that wall before German reunification, and being part of the implementation of democracy in East Germany before it became part of the larger Germany. And so he began his talk to us Americans by saying to us, "Thank you, America, for giving us Germans our democratic heritage." To which I said to him later, "We may be depending upon you to preserve it." On the other hand, it is still far too early here in America to give up hope. American democratic heritage is certainly in danger today, but that heritage runs very deep, unlike in Germany in 1932. I remember seeing two back-to-back long television newscasts around, I believe, the 70th anniversary of the end of World War II. And the 70th anniversary of the end of World War II, as it was commemorated in London, and then as it was commemorated in Germany. Very different. In London, there was this very large, very regal and ritualized ceremony in front of the cenotaph. I think that's what it's called, the cenotaph. The tomb of the unknown soldier in London. Whatever that is. It was a very highly ritualized, very dignified ceremony. In Germany, for the same moment, 70th anniversary of the end of World War II, they had a huge lecture, very intellectual. It was a lecture held in the chamber of the Bundestag, in the chamber of the parliament, in front of all the parliamentarians and the prime minister and the president and all the Supreme Court justices. All came to hear this lecture by this academic historian on the history of German democracy. And one of the things he pointed out was that after World War I and before World War II, during the Weimar Republic, democracy was viewed by many in Germany as an imposition by the Allies, as a foreign import. So when that German diplomat thanked America for giving them their democratic heritage, perhaps that's what he was thinking about. Going forward, we need to follow closely and point out what is going on every time a step is taken to undermine our democracy. We need to be pointing that out locally, right here, and regionally, in terms that people locally can understand, even though many have no historical perspective. In this week's Parsha, the concept of covenant runs through much of the reading. We read of the covenant between the parts, made symbolically with a strange ritual involving the cutting of animal carcasses. We learn of circumcision as a sign of the covenant. We see name changes. Avram becomes Avraham. Sarai becomes Sarah. The introduction of a hey, the letter hey, into each name. Hey being a letter that sometimes indicates an abbreviation of the name of God. They bring God into their name. Avram is told, Al tira Avram, do not fear Avram. Anochi magen lach, I am a shield to you. We reference this in the Amidah when God is referenced as Magen Avraham, the shield of Abraham. Sacharcha harbem me'od, your reward shall be very great. Avram is told, Ani El Shaddai, hi talech lefanai veheyet tamim. I am El Shaddai. Walk before me and be tamim, blameless, whole, of integrity. ואתנה בריתי ביני ובינך וארבה אותך מאוד מאוד. And I will establish my covenant between me and you, and I will increase you extremely extreme. Walk in my ways, do what is right, and things will go well for you. This is the nature of my covenant. Covenant is the basis of good society. Acknowledging that we are part of each other, that we need each other, that we have obligations towards each other. This is the nature of having mitzvot. Mitzvot, mitzvah, commandment, being commanded, holding mutual obligation toward each other. Immoral society is where we care less about each other, or don't care at all, where we perceive ourselves to be separate from each other, where we pretend we have nothing to do with each other, and so we harm each other. This is the sin of Sodom and Gomorrah. This is the sin of Sodom, the city which already is in this Parsha, which we just read about, actually, when looking at the Torah. The sin of Sodom, which is referenced as wicked. In next week's Parsha, it will be destroyed for its wickedness. Much of Christian tradition, and so Western society, describes that wickedness narrowly as sexual immorality, hence the word sodomy. But rabbinic tradition speaks of the wickedness of Sodom in far more general terms. In fact, biblical tradition speaks of it that way, as cruelty and inhospitality. The sin of Sodom is the opposite of what we uphold when we recite the blessings of the Amidah. The sin of Sodom is when we do not care for the sick, when we do not lift up the fallen, we do not liberate the oppressed, we forget those who have come before us, when we do not care for the poor and the disadvantaged, but only admire power and wealth, and when we let violence thrive unchecked. These are the sins of Sodom, summarized in Ezekiel chapter 16. Behold, this is the sin of your sister Sodom, arrogance. She and her daughters had plenty of bread and untroubled tranquility, yet she did not strengthen the hand of the poor and the needy. This is what we must strive not to be, even and especially in the face of powerful interests that would strive to make us so. Instead, we must come together in a full sense of mutual interdependence and mutual obligation to defend decency and to defend democracy, and to point out and challenge all the instances we will see going forward of indecency and illiberal so-called democracy. As Milwaukee community activist Venice Williams wrote this week, it's published in their paper, continue to do the good work, continue to build bridges, not walls, continue to lead with compassion, continue the demanding work of liberation for all, continue to dismantle broken systems, large and small, continue to set the best example for the children, continue to be a vessel of nourishing joy, continue right where you are, right where you live into your days. Do so in the name of the Creator who expects nothing less from each of us. And if you are not continuing all of the above in community, partnership, collaboration, what is it you have been doing? What is it you are waiting for? And we will be talking about this more, because we need to be doing about this more. And there are things that can be done. there are things that can be done, and we'll talk about that later. But for now, Shabbat Shalom, because there always is a time of rest and then doing. Rest and then doing. And it's not up to any one of us, it's up to all of us. Shabbat Shalom.